Hi, it's Joe Mazumdar of Exploration Insights at the January 2024 edition of the Metals Investment Forum. And with me today is the VP of Exploration of Gladiator Metals, Marcus Harden. Marcus, who I've known for several years, who I initially met in Guyana, working on gold in greenstone belts. He's now meandered a few latitude degrees up to the Yukon. So give us a bit of background in what is Gladiator Metals and what's the overarching theme for Gladiator.
So Gladiator Metals was a shell company last year, and I went up to review the Whitehorse copper project, which was a recently sort of put back together old historically producing mining district. It had extracted 10.5 million tons at 1.5% copper and almost a gram a ton gold. Historically, but local business owners, the Coin family, who run Kluane Drilling, which is a internationally successful drilling company, had put the project together over about 40 years. They'd reacquired all the properties.
It took them 40 years to
40
reassemble
years,
it.
yeah. So it had been producing.
But it never had been consolidated, right?
Not since mining ceased in 1982, yeah.
And that was Hud Bay?
That was Hud Bay, yeah.
Okay.
So when mining ceased, the project sort of broke apart, and the Coins have been putting it together since then. So we were really the first company to be able to look at this contiguous land package since Hud Bay exited. And we're very fortunate. Hud Bay left mainly due to the copper price environment, so not because mineralization had run out. And in fact, they drilled a couple of prospect areas, which we're working on now through to reserve status for the mine before they exited the project. So we went and looked at it. We could see that near-term resource potential. It's very, very much from surface. It's high grade, historically producing at 1.5%. And for a junior company such as us, it was a good lead into sort of starting to develop resources. Our overall target is to try and piece together sort of 5 different target areas, put initial drilling into those, look at the grade, the potential upside from credits, which were, although significant contributors to the historical mine, they were actually never assayed for in HUD-based drilling. And the idea is that we're going to try and get a line of sight on sort of between 50 and 100 million tons at around 1.5% copper.
Of open pittable?
Of combination. So historically it was open pit and underground. And I think, it's far too early to tell, but I think conceptually we would be considering both those options given the grades that we've been seeing today.
Right. And this is a skarn deposit, and you're like on the margins of a big intrusive body that's got scale.
That's right. So we've got about 35 kilometers of this margin under tenure, and there's sort of 30 known prospects. Historically, exploration was very much driven by outcrop. So wherever we can see outcropping magnetite copper skarns, there's generally a pretty tight drill grid around them from Hud Bay.
And you've got lots of, from what I saw in the core, lots of bornite as well.
Yeah, lots of bornite. Yeah, it is sort of actually probably the predominant copper mineral that we see down at Cowley Park, one of the prospects certainly. Yeah.
And you obviously got moly as well in some spots, and obviously gold. And not all of this was assayed for every area.
Yeah, actually, none of them, historically were assayed. It was purely assayed for copper. And the other thing we noted looking at the data is that it was purely assayed for the high grade portion as well. So only the sort of 1.5% and above copper, which obviously is fairly visual. But actually, when we're finding that when we assayed whole holes, we have good broad shoulders of sort of 0.5 and above, over hundreds of meters.
That would fit into an open pit.
Yeah, that if we, we're very much concentrated on that high grade portion. We think that's sort of our unique selling point. But once we get to the stage of resources and optimizing these pits, obviously the lower grade envelopes are going to come into play as well.
Right. The Yukon's obviously been on everybody's mind. I was up there, that's when I went on the site visit back in November during the Yukon Geoscience Conference. The new, a lot of talk about, all these projects, but infrastructural challenges, are also an issue with the Yukon. your project, plus or minus, is infrastructurally not challenged, but also you're close to the Yukon. So can you talk about the dynamics that you deal with in terms of like you're like 20 minutes away from
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we're sort of within 30 kilometers of the town of Whitehorse itself. The advantages at the exploration stage are exactly as you outlined. There's because it's a historical mining district as well. There's drill roads throughout the property, which we
Then
can
you were
access.
quoting what, $200?
We're under $220 a meter, but that's everything from the drill costs, the asset costs, salaries.
Versus somebody who's up in a remote part of the Yukon or Alaska, spending about $1,000 per meter in terms of bang for buck. It's like 5 meters to 1 meter.
Yeah, and also having the drill company as sort of the project vendors, they we can mobilize a rig in a couple of hours.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
And drillers are based in town, so there's no permanent camp. Everyone goes home at the end of the day, so all of those sort of, I guess, management time overheads are also not part of the project. Okay,
and the negative part of being so close to Whitehorse is that how do people feel about reopening a mine?
Yeah,
near Whitehorse.
So there's a couple of different aspects to that, ranging from sort of nearby communities, but also the First Nations. First Nations we found today have been very supportive.
And the Coin brothers are also First Nations.
That's right.
members.
So the project vendors are First Nations citizens, and they still own the projects. We're earning into them through our exploration work. So obviously that gives us some really good connections to the First Nations. We're also the only mining project within the traditional territories of the Kwanlundun and the Tarn as well. So we're sort of single focus for them. Community, obviously that's the wider Whitehorse community is a mixed bag. They're ranging from people who are fundamentally opposed to mining activities all the way through to a large amount of people who work in the industry. The Yukon territory is a mining territory. It's the largest business outside of government. And so there's a lot of sort of inbuilt support in the community. And obviously that's something we're particularly focused on, is mobilizing that support, mobilizing the support of the First Nations. Government has been exceptionally supportive, I would say. Yeah. And so has sort of the local city council. They've been helping us approve permits, which we've had no trouble getting. We've had 4 in the past year.
You've already drilled like 2 4,000 meter programs?
Yeah, that's right. We've drilled 8,000 meters at Cowley Park as 2 separate permits. And then we're currently drilling 10,000 meters into the Middle Chief area, which we recently announced. Right. So that's a separate permit, and that's actually within the municipal area. So we're very lucky to have received city support for.
Are you drilling with one rig?
One rig at the moment, but we anticipate having a permit for another prospect called the Cub Trend within the next week or two, and we'd consider getting a second rig out onto that, I think, whilst snow's on the ground.
Right. Yep. And the Yukon's obviously, we talked about infrastructure, but you are close to town. You could access grid power if it was available, and there's a major highway road that goes to the port facility if you produced a copper concentrate. And I'm gathering, because you want to go low tonnage, high grade, your throughput rate wouldn't require a lot of power either.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and it's also things like, because it's a historic mine, there is an existing tails facility. Yeah. There. I mean, that's not currently on our tenure, but a mine has been built and has operated essentially on the footprint of what we're exploring.
Okay, so in terms of Gladiator right now, you're funded for how long doing these drill programs that you've got?
So we've currently got $6.5 million in the bank, which we are drilling with one rig at the moment, but potentially 2. So I think, near term, we're going to have probably 15,000 meters being drilled sort of before April.
Before April?
Wow. Yeah, which will obviously which will start to eat into that. But we're also hoping that that'll be the catalyst for potentially a raise after that as well.
Okay. Yeah. After about 15,000 meters of drilling.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And that drilling is pretty low risk. So we're drilling the Little Chief area, which was the area of most of the mining. So 8.5 million tons at 1.5% copper came out of that from open pit and underground. But there was another resource area drilled from the decline, which was discovered by Hud Bay. which has, I think, some of the drill intercepts are sort of 40 plus meters at 3% copper. And that's unmined. So low-hanging fruit, we'll be drilling that. We'll be drilling the extensions to that body as well. And we've also been flying, these are copper magnetite skarns.
Yep.
And we've been flying a drone survey, aeromagnetic survey over this area. And we've defined a couple of blind magnetic anomalies of sort of similar scale and scope to the Little Chief deposit, which don't have drill holes in them yet. And they're within hundreds of meters of Little Chief as well. So,
yeah, when I visited the project, that's what I liked about it was the scale, but the proximity, the low cost, which is obviously not common in the Yukon, but also the fact that you live there. And so the social license to operate and the community relations, you're not flying in and out of Whitehorse. You actually live there.
Yeah. And again, that's we're in terms of social license and community, we're really building off established relationships of our project vendors. They run a very successful.
Yeah, because they were drilling that prior.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, but they also they're Whitehorse born and raised. They're First Nation citizens, and they sort of went to school with the mayor, that type of thing. So very established relationships within the community, which we're very grateful for.
Okay. Well, let's wrap that up. So thank you very much. It's Gladiator Metals, VPX Marcus Harden. It's Joe Mazumdar, Exploration Insights from the January 2024 edition of the Metals Investment Forum. Thank you for listening. We'll see you later.